going to be calling to the podium, but let me hasten to say, Dr. Obi Peter Adigwe was, amongst others, the pioneer head of the Health Policy Research and Development Unit at the Nigerian National Assembly. Mark that, the Nigerian Federal State of Nigeria. If you know how big that state is and that parliament, how important it is to Africa, where he formulated research and development strategies in health policy with a view to developing an evidence-based approach to legislation and policy formulation in Nigeria. He also developed innovative and contextual capacity building models for healthcare professionals, as well as coordinated research that contributed to health systems strengthening. He has a significant number of peer-reviewed publications, including the first knowledge attitudes and perception study on Ebola virus in Nigeria, as well as the seminar paper on rotational use of medicines. Whilst in the United Kingdom, he was the lead author of the article, and I quote, "Rewrite the Script for Non-Medical Prescribing," close quotes, which contributed to prescribing policy positions or reforms in the British Parliament. What a contribution. Can we give him a round of applause? Throughout his career, Dr. Adigwe has pioneered a significant number of innovative research and development projects. Most recently, he led teams that secured various high-profile grants, including Clinical Trials Grant for the ECOWAS, that is the Economic Community of West African States, an API grant from the Afrexim Bank, and a Drug and Development Mega Grant from TED Fund. With those words, I would like to call to the podium our esteemed guests to come and address us. Welcome to South Africa, Professor Obi Adigwe.
Professor Kaya, I thought you trained him to be a politician. The man is the first technocratic politician that I have seen. Very well done. It's going to be a very tough act following Professor Mkize. The thoughts on epistemology, ontology, and I like how he sneaked a little bit of von Betalanffy in there. I recognize what you did. However, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by paying my respect to the dignitaries in the room. Deputy Vice Chancellor, Professor Mkize, Registrar Cleland, senior officials from the municipality led by Mr. Eric Appelgren, senior officials from the medical school, officials from the Traditional Medicine Practice Association, and my own team, Senior Director Arabiana and Dr. Abubakar Danraka. Let me begin by conveying the regrets of my Honorable Minister of State, Senator Dr. Olorunimbe Mamora, is one of the greatest advocates of our current position of developing African solutions for African issues. And from day one that this particular project was being conceptualized, he had us give him a weekly briefing. And up until just a few days ago, He was meant to lead the delegation himself to arrive here on Monday. But incidentally, those of you who know the current terrain in Nigeria will realize we're in a pre-election year. And his boss, the president, gave him a directive which he could not step down. And even though he's not here in person, like Professor Kaya mentioned, he's here in spirit. And he's being represented by a very senior director in the ministry. He would also be joining us on the second leg of the trip, because we have it on good authority that due to the preeminence of this particular engagement, he said that he will still come regardless of the fact that the engagement has begun. So we're expecting him in a few hours' time. I'm sure Senior Director Arabiana will convey the regrets in the words of Senator Dr. Olorunimbe Mamora, but suffice it to say that because I'm the one signing the agreement, it's also my place to apologize on his behalf. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, this particular historical and auspicious moment didn't start 6 weeks ago, neither did it start on the onset of COVID in 2019. For close to a decade now, we had conceptualized the medicine security concept. A medicine security concept that we conceptualized close to a decade ago was a concept that argued that unless we as Africans begin to determine how our medicines are developed, how our medicines are produced, and how our medicines are distributed, we will never be in a position to ensure sustainable access to safe, affordable, life-saving medicines. Embedded in the medicine security concept were socio-economic indicators that align with local manufacturing and local development of these resources. Things like job creation, things like capacity building, things like knowledge transfer and revenue generation, not only for the practitioners, but also for government. These were all embedded in the concept of medicine security. Well before COVID, a lot of the stakeholders told us we were pushing the wrong concept, that it is more economically viable to manufacture in Europe and in Asia and use sophisticated logistics formulas to bring those products to Africa. For a long time, we were on the back foot, but it didn't stop us from being strong proponents of medicine security. COVID has now shown everybody that we were right and they were wrong. As a people, we must not abdicate the responsibility for providing health care for our people to people outside this continent. As Africans, we must not abdicate the responsibility for developing socio-economic programs that will ensure that our youth, our women have jobs, are adequately employed. They no longer seek pastures, whether through legal or illegal immigration elsewhere. Those jobs must remain here in Africa. As a people, we must no longer abdicate the responsibility of designing programs that will ensure that the plants which we find in our background for which traditional medicine practitioners have gained knowledge handed over from generations and generations before them, that the knowledge is preserved and designed in a format that it is translated into processes and products that will result into validated healthcare solutions, as well as money in the pockets of those practitioners. We can no longer abdicate those responsibilities. And so specifically for this event today, we reached out to the South African High Commission about 4 years ago, shortly after I was appointed Director General of the National Institute. And based on our engagement, a long list of institutions were identified. And those institutions, that list went through a rigorous screening process. And it is to the credit of UKZN and the good work that Professor Kaya, Dr. Mayashri, and the team are doing here that I'm pleased to inform you that this particular entity emerged as the most valuable for us to begin this partnership with. And I think that deserves a round of applause. And so I was telling the people on my table that putting together this sort of signing ceremony will take 6 to 9 months. But because of the efforts and because of the preeminence of this particular topic today, I think it took 5 to 6 weeks to conceptualize and bring to the table. And that is the reason why we have to acknowledge that the task we're all doing here today might actually be one of the most important tasks for the future of Africa. Now, a lot of you know who the Institute is here. Professor Kaya has his disciple who has been speaking about their work, but many of you may not know about NIPRD, the institute I had. So it'll be good to just mention a few words about NIPRD. The National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development was established just over 3 decades ago. And the intention of the founding fathers of NIPRD was to put together a science-based organization which will expedite the utilization of the resources we have in Africa using the human capacity that we have to develop world-class processes and products that are aimed to improving access to healthcare for our people, whilst also achieving key socio-economic indicators. And so, in the past 3 decades, the most pertinent question I'm sure that have arisen in your minds is, how has NIPRD fared in meeting with those lofty aspirations? Currently, the Institute has close to 75 MSCs and PhDs, all aggregated along the various value chain dispositions in phytomedicinal and drug development. We were also the first in our region to achieve both the ISO 9001 and the ISO 17025. For the uninitiated, those ISO certifications indicate that when we undertake the processes, the lab analysis in our establishment in Abuja, the results which we bring out are recognized all over the world. Based on our activities, we've been named a center of excellence in various relevant areas by various world accredited bodies, including the WHO affiliated bodies and AU affiliated bodies. We're also the first agency in the world to develop a phytomedicine from drug discovery all the way to phase 2 clinical trials for sickle cell. That particular product, we have evidence that it is in use in over 40 countries across the world. More recently, just like the director of programs mentioned, we redesigned our engagement projects with phytomedicinal practitioners. And I am glad to report here that under the leadership and with the support of the ministry, as at today, we have trained over 1,000 traditional medicine practitioners in Nigeria. We developed what we call the contextual processing protocol, which enabled us to take the training to the localities where those practitioners reside. And when we get there, we not only undertake the technical training for the practitioners, we also undertake training in other ancillary areas, such as how to attract finance for your project, how to undertake the often, well, I wouldn't say often, the sometimes cumbersome process of registering your products so that your product now becomes mainstream and is available in a validated format. Whilst taking these trainings to the hinterlands for these practitioners, we also embedded a stakeholder engagement aspect whereby the key politicians, the key policymakers, the key investors, other stakeholders that can be identified in that value chain are invited, and we have them participate in that training. And it is on record that in some of those workshops, when these practitioners have exhibited their often rudimentary products, one or two of those stakeholders have adopted those products and promised to fund it to the stage where it becomes a registered product. That is the design that we've used in our training of over 1,000 traditional medicine practitioners. More recently for COVID, those of you who are fluent in English and in French would recognize NIPRD's analysis of the COVID organics preparation. The institute which I head was the first in the world to undertake the categorical analysis of that product. And there is an abundance of evidence in the internet and in policy documents to indicate that NIPRD's analysis was key to policy making, decision making in different parts of the world, and that led to the saving of thousands of lives and conservation of millions of dollars, which were rechanneled to other projects in terms of COVID-19. Similarly, NIPRD was one of the first in the world to determine that a plant called Andrographis paniculata may have certain characteristics that would enable it to be included in anti-COVID properties. We have now completed the animal studies of that particular product, and we're now putting it forward for clinical trials. NIPRD was also one of the first to undertake a validation and verification protocol by inviting over 20 professors using a transdisciplinary model, and that particular document has now been open sourced so that colleagues across the world would gain from the knowledge which we put together in terms of verifying claims for COVID-19. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I could stand here and talk about NIPRD for days, but I know that I only have 15 minutes on my schedule, and I can see the director of programs itching to come and collect the microphone from me. Ladies, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the speakers who spoke before me were very eloquent in telling you the reasons why we're here today. But I'd just like to correct one or two things that were said earlier on. This particular agreement, even though it may seem on the surface to be between Nigeria and South Africa, is actually an agreement for the whole of Africa, all 54 African countries. Because as you well know, if Nigeria and South Africa are on the same page on one issue, the other 52 African countries will align. That should give you an indication of how important this particular task is. And we at NIPRD recognize how important it is, and that is the reason why, even before putting ink down on paper, we have already begun to work out methodologies to implement this partnership. Penultimate week, we were invited to brief the Vice President of Nigeria, His Excellency Professor Yemi Osinbajo, on projects which he identified we should work on. We selected 3 projects: sickle cell anemia, prostate issues, and fibroids. And those of you who are like my professor here, understand the genomics of diseases, will quickly identify that these are 3 diseases which inordinately affect people in Africa, the Negroid population. And part of the implementation strategies that we put forward for His Excellency, the Vice President, was that we will be using this partnership when we come to implementing the assignment he has given us. And so it remains for me to inform the ladies and gentlemen in this room and the millions of Africans watching us virtually today that this agreement signifies the emergence of new African scientists and academics. African scientists and academics who are sufficiently intrepid and who recognize the artificial barriers that have kept us where we have been for decades and centuries, and have begun now to work stridently together to break down those barriers so that we can be in a position to expedite solution making for our people. The new African scientist and academic who is patriotic and who has significant Afrocentricity in abundance. That is what this particular signing ceremony is about to kick off. And so, ladies and gentlemen, Africa is watching and Africa is waiting. I thank you all for your kind attention.
There should be some officials from the university who would be coming to administer the signing ceremony. As we have said, this is a collaborative effort, and this event really marks a formal official process, but as we are well aware through Dr. Adigwe that work has already started. It's not like they're starting tomorrow. Work has already started, and again, let's give them this opportunity to come and sign these MOUs, and then I'll give to the officials delegated to administer the signing ceremony.
Round of applause.